Are you evil? I want you to seriously think about that question and your response to it personally. Are you evil? Because even if you consider yourself a good person, a moral person, someone that detests evil in every way, shape, and form, I want you to recognize that you're probably not doing as much good as you should be. But more on that in a moment. Hello everyone, I am Eric Alden. Welcome to Our Dark History, where we discuss the darkest people, places, and events in human history. Today, we're going to be talking about an idea that is very strange, I think you could say. It's the idea that good people are morally obligated to pursue positions of power, and not just any positions of power, the highest ones in society. And the reason for this is that good people, they really need to get into positions of power because, well, otherwise bad people do. If you're a self-proclaimed good person, you are kind of morally obligated to pursue positions of power because the world is going to be a better place if you're in that position of power than if they are. But without any further ado, let's get right into the meat and potatoes of this. People of a high moral compass, they share a couple of very unique tendencies, right? So they tend not to be power hungry, right? They're just, on average, they're less power hungry because a lot of people that are bad, I'm not sure you could even call them bad. Let's call them immoral. They tend to be very concerned with achieving, status, achieving influence over others, and they tend to be the kind of people who are just going to cynically and pragmatically play the role of, climbing the ladder. Sometimes you got to do things that, most people would consider pretty bad. Now, if you look at any high political position, right? I mean, let's look at the president of the United States. Anyone who's, been in that office, you can bet that they've probably done some immoral things throughout their life. And this isn't a knock on the current president or any other president for that matter, but just in general. I mean, this is the highest status position that you can have in politics. You are literally the ruler of the free world. You probably have done some pretty evil things to get there. I mean, there are dozens of conspiracy theories and, alleged crimes of people that have been, political leaders. And, sometimes it's not even the president. Sometimes it's as low as, sometimes local politicians, hell, dirty cops. So it's not even that you have to be in a position of crazy high power, but just any position of power will do. Because it's more likely that bad people are going to be in those positions of power than good people. Because good people, they're not too concerned with the power. They're just concerned with being good. So this is kind of an argument against human nature. It is an argument against human nature because the good people of this world, right? Maybe you're one of them. Maybe you're not. Maybe you're just watching this video, but if you consider yourself a good person, looking for a position of power is going to be outside of your nature as a person because, you're just not too drawn by, you're not allured by the status, by the influence over others because you don't see it as like, ooh, I can manipulate people and have all the power and everything else. That's just not how your brain works. You want to be a good person. And being a good person, like I was just saying, it very seldom has a lot to do with pursuing artificial status or, whatever position it may be. Whether it's the president, whether it's the class president in your high school, whatever the position of power may be. But it's very important to note that you don't become opportunistic or manipulative when pursuing this power. So if you're someone of a high moral compass, you are obligated to pursue these positions of power, but not forfeit your moral compass in the process of doing so. And this is important because, I think there are a lot of people that, the line is just kind of blurry for them. There are some people that are kind of hovering in that halfway point between being good and evil, right? Alexander Solzhenitsyn once said that the line dividing good from evil runs through every single human being. It's a very important idea, and only you know if you're fostering the goodness or the badness. Only you know. Because what you present to the world, people always present a mask, right? You're wearing a mask. You're not, the person you are on your LinkedIn profile or your resume or your Facebook. Man, that's not who you are. That is not who you are. You are presenting an artificial version of yourself to, advance your own influence, your own standing in the group. It's kind of, it's just kind of the way things are. If you were to be completely honest, you went on Facebook every day, yeah, I kind of really want to overthrow the government. I kind of want to assassinate these people, I really hate, this or that other group of people, or, I'm really angry about life in general. It would be a little weird, understandably so, So it's just not the place for that. But ultimately, it is very important to note that it is a mask. Your public persona that, you use in your social situations, in your work environment, working with clients or, whatever it is that you do in life. It's important to understand that's a persona. That's not who you really are. You know who you really are. Or if you don't, it's really important to find out. Because it's all about the outcome. The outcome is everything. It's important because it encourages or discourages more behavior of the same. If, let's say, so good people should make it easier to be good. So let's say you're a good person. Let's say, you could run for, let's say, maybe it doesn't have to be too big. You don't have to run for the presidency. But let's say you're well off enough. You could run for the House of Representatives in your state. And you could, possibly win. Could be a good thing. If you're a good person, you're probably disinclined to do that. However, if you do decide that you want to run for office, then you're going to be in a position where you can create more goodness for the world. And whatever your definition of goodness is, right? I'm not too concerned with the definitions here, right? Because your definition of goodness might differ a lot from mine. And that's just the way these things are. But it's just important to note that if you're a good person, at least in your own mind, you should pursue power. Because you make it easier for good people to be good. And ultimately, that's what the government should do. Right? If you're in any kind of political position where you influence, the economy or the way people interact with each other, or even urban designers, architects, these are the kind of people that, the stuff that they do is going to have a profound impact over thousands or millions of people over time. It's an enormous amount of responsibility. And if those people are good people, they should encourage and maximize the opportunity for goodness. Let's say that you have some kind of law, right? Let's say you become a politician and you can somehow pass through Congress that students who report to their teachers that their parents, let's say maybe they didn't pay their taxes. Those students get out of class for the rest of the year. So if little Jimmy tells the teachers that, Jimmy's dad, Jimmy Sr., didn't pay any taxes in 2018, well, Jimmy doesn't have to do any more homework or even go to school. He can stay home and play video games. I think we can all recognize that this would be an immoral law. It would break down the family unit. It would encourage distrust. It would hurt the relationships between children and their parents. Especially, Imagine little Jimmy reports his dad and it turns out to be a serious thing. Well, Jimmy Sr. goes to prison for a long time. There goes that parental figure, which you kind of need when you're growing up. So the incentive is there, but it's ultimately a bad incentive. You are discouraging positive behavior. Whereas, if you're a good person, you could find some kind of way to encourage the good. Maybe instead of that, maybe it's like, if little Jimmy goes out and does X amount of hours of charity work, he doesn't have to do homework. Those are the kind of incentives that would really bring about positive change. Because, he's out there, he's getting real world experience, volunteering, getting a little active in the community, some physical exercise doesn't hurt either. So those are all things that they're going to have a profound impact, right? I mean, especially if they're available to, an entire generation or, imagine that opportunity, to go out, do, let's say 100 hours of volunteer community work for, let's say the school year. The students that met that requirement, they didn't have to do any homework. Think that's a very powerful incentive because, boy, do kids really hate homework? I remember being a kid and coming home from school and then having to do more school. That sucked. That really, really sucked. But if those kids had that incentive there, that would bring about some meaningful positive change. So you see why it's important to have good people in these positions of power. Maybe the kind of person that would be in a position of power to create a law like that, maybe that's some kind of, on the board of education or, something like that. I'm not too familiar with the educational politics and rules and all that, but would you understand what I'm getting at, right? If these people were good, they would pass and encourage more rules and laws like that because it would foster more goodness. And it ultimately gets down to this one very important principle. Goodness begets goodness. I'm going to say it again. Goodness begets goodness. The more goodness that you put out into the world, the more goodness there's going to be in the world, man. Now, I don't necessarily think that it comes back to you, right? Because there are a lot of people out there that they kind of adopted this karma view of the world. If you help some old lady pass, cross the street, she's gonna donate to an orphanage, and then the orphanage is gonna raise a kid, and that kid's gonna start a company, and that company's gonna, hire you one day, and it's all gonna be handy dandy, happy. I just don't think that, the world actually works like that. I'm very realistic in my perception of the world, or at least I'd like to think so. And expecting that there's just going to be some random goodness that comes back to you, a little bit unrealistic. There is luck. There is probability. I don't think that you helping that old lady cross the street necessarily changes how that orphanage is going to act, right? Because, you don't know if that old lady changes her mind to donate to the orphanage, or maybe she does because of your action, and it doesn't really make a big difference, whatever the case may be. And the odds of it directly coming back to you, I think those are pretty low. However, that doesn't mean you shouldn't be good. I'm just against that idea of karma, because when you have that kind of ideology, what is going to happen is you're going to make connections that aren't there. You're going to connect dots that aren't really connected. And what's ultimately going to happen is you're going to become cynical because you're going to go out, do some good in the world, and then good isn't going to come your way. And then you're going to be mad about it because, what the hell, man? Karma failed me. Karma did me wrong, man. I was out there doing good, and then someone stole my car. What the hell? Whatever the case is, man, there's just randomness. There's probability. That's what life is. There is a chance. But, now let's get back to, this is a very long tangent here. But getting back to this idea, this principle. what you put out into the world is generally, there's going to be more of it. There's going to be more goodness in the world if you encourage more goodness, if you put more goodness out there. And hey, maybe you're stupid, right? Maybe you're just not very formidable. Maybe you're incompetent, whatever the case is, man, because we've all got our faults. If that's the case, you just do the best you can, man. If you do the best you can, you really make the most of yourself, you optimize your life, you live up to your potential to the best of your ability with what you've got, that's going to be a profound impact. Because, compare that to, the millions of people who just kind of live life, they pass on by, they don't really care too much about the future or the rest of humanity or the world or whatever it is. Those kinds of people, they're going to pass on through, not make much of a difference one way or the other. It's up to people who have this strong moral compass to go out, to pursue power, to make the best of themselves, to live up to their potential, and to encourage more goodness in the world. It's really important that you do that. Because maybe it doesn't directly make your life better, but you're going to have a disproportionate effect on the lives of, potentially millions of people. Imagine being in control of the government. I'm sorry, I keep using these government examples. Yeah, it's kind of hard to think of other ones. Let's say you're the CEO of a fairly large corporation, let's say some kind of social media kind of thing. Now, there's a lot of opportunity there where you can play with people's emotions and psychology and different kind of stuff like that. A bunch of weird, tricky wizardry. But you are in a very powerful position there because you can, there are people at Facebook that, they can tell by your status, the kind of things that you like, the kind of things that you comment, what you say, what you write, what you look at, what your mood is. And they can encourage that mood. They can discourage that mood. They can kind of change your frame of mind. They've got, I can't imagine how many psychologists and therapists and computer scientists you have to all have working together to make something like that happen. Props to them for doing it, because that sounds kind of crazy. But, the point is, if they wanted to, they could really foster negativity. They could really encourage the hate. I think there are a lot of incentives on social media as it is to encourage, kind of outrage politics, right? This is the big problem with the media these days. Everyone complains about the media. No one's objective. Everyone's just peddling fake news and their opinions. And to an extent, it is kind of true. But the media is a reflection of our own tastes. What it is that you click is going to influence what they write. And if you only click outrage articles, or, I like to call it outrage porn because I think that's a really good way to put it. If the only time you hear about, let's say you're a Republican, right? And the only information you ever get about the Democrats is, Elizabeth Warren wants to kill all the Republicans, or, something like that. Those kinds of article headlines that everyone talks about, or, we can flip it. Let's say you're a Democrat. The only information about Republicans you get is, the Republicans want to, kill all the minorities and start concentration camps, something like that. Because there are definitely people out there. That's the kind of information I get on the daily. That's going to warp your perception of the world, warp your perception of your fellow citizens. If you genuinely and honestly hate someone for their political beliefs, whatever they may be, I think that's more of a poor reflection on you than it is them. Because, you can equate whatever political ideology with whatever it is that you want. But, ultimately they think, this is their perception of the world. This is their take on it. This is America, Granted that you're an American. I know I always make these videos with the idea in mind that you are American, but I know anyone in the world can watch this. It's mostly Americans that watch these videos anyway, so whatever. Whatever, dude. But getting back to the big idea here is the media has these incentives that encourage divisiveness, they encourage hate, fear-mongering, hate-mongering, outrage porn, whatever it is. They encourage this, because as of right now, this is just how the incentives are set up. If everyone sat down and wrote objective and well-researched, well-thought-out articles and news and write-ups, well, they just wouldn't make as much money. They wouldn't make as much money. So it's up to you as a consumer of news to fight against that rule. Because as of right now, that's really all we can do. This is the incentive that's playing out right now. But there's not really an effective way we can go about changing it, how do you change it, right? This is the big struggle of the internet age. What do you do to change this? How do you change people's incentives? How do you get them to write the best articles? Well, it's just tough. It's a tough situation. But it goes back to this idea that the people in power, they influence those incentives. Because as of right now, the laws as they stand, the rules on the book, this is what they encourage. What we have right now is a state of being that is encouraged by the current rules. Now, of course, there's always change. There's always change of this and that. I'm sure there's a law that was passed, this year, last year, whatever, that still hasn't necessarily changed any segment of society enough to notice. But whatever it is, there's always going to be change. The point I'm trying to get at here is that these incentives are, they're just really important. Really important. And bad people will encourage more bad behavior. So let's look at everyone's favorite example, Nazi Germany. Because, oh boy, Nazi Germany. What a crazy time to live. What a crazy place to be. That's all I gotta say. But really, if you look at the situation there, you had a government that was predicated on hate, right? It's not a lot of the people that were supporters of the Nazi party, it's not even that they really liked the ideas. They just hated everyone else. They hated the Jews enough that, yeah, I'll sign on. They hated the Slavs enough and the communists. And they were like, whatever gets rid of those people. By the way, if your political ideology is centered around not liking someone else, it's probably not a good political ideology. Just by the by. But it wasn't enough that they controlled the country. It wasn't enough. They had to have a system that encouraged that kind of behavior, that kind of way of thinking. Because, the people that were, let's say you were German, you were born into Nazi Germany, the government wanted to program your mind with rewards and incentives to favor that regime. That's just the nature of government. They want more people that are sympathizers or identify with that government. And, it just created this horrible system where, a lot of people had their own personal demons come out because that's what the system encouraged. That's what the system encouraged. So when people that are evil pursue those positions of power, when they become the chancellor or the president or the Führer or whatever the hell they become, they are going to have the power to create rewards and incentives that change your behavior. That's a really important idea. So it really brings me to my conclusion on all of this. It's not enough to not be evil. You need to encourage goodness. It's not enough to not be evil. you need to encourage goodness. Thank you so much for watching. I really hope you all enjoyed this little presentation here. Be sure to comment if you have any of your own thoughts you want to add to this, and I will see you in the next one. Peace out.